Hello and welcome to the Doge and Maha News Channel. My name is Chris, and today we're going to focus on the Department of Government Efficiency. We're going to go ahead and react to a video of Fareed Zakaria and his thoughts on Doge. Fareed is from CNN. Before we get into that, though, I do want to remind you that I am bringing you videos regarding Doge every single day. If you are like me and Doge is a topic that really excites you or you want to follow, then you're going to want to make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. Let's see what Fareed thinks about Doge.
Here's my take. Of Donald Trump's recent announcements, the one that intrigues, even excites me the most, is the establishment of DOGE, the misnamed Department of Government Efficiency. Misnamed because it is really a non-governmental advisory body that will work with the White House, not any kind of department inside government. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who will be in charge of DOGE, are both brilliant, and the federal government has clearly become too expansive and it's writ too cumbersome. There are over 180,000 pages of federal regulations.
I'm actually kind of surprised. I mean, from what I understand, this guy is fairly liberal in his politics, but he seems to be supportive of the concept of DOGE and cutting government waste. He's actually calling out how many pages there are of government regulations, how we are over-regulated as a nation, and because of that, government seems to want to create all these new entities, all these new agencies to follow up and support and enforce these government regulations.
Surely it's worth taking a close look at them and retiring many.
Agree.
Observers have pointed out that the duo's efforts will be much harder to achieve than they imagine. Washington may be quite inefficient, but most of what it does is write checks with great efficiency. Social Security,
Yes, I agree. Mostly what the government does is write checks. However, I would disagree with great efficiency. I think they are super inefficient. And all of these departments he's going to talk about here in a second, they could probably use big software upgrades, some AI technology, different ways to really streamline and improve these processes in order to make the check cutting and the transfer of money into these people's accounts a lot more efficient, because I bet there are huge inefficiencies in all of these government departments that are cutting checks. All they have to do is go in there and streamline a few things, and it's going to save a lot of money. And so there's definitely plenty of opportunity there. They can still cut all the checks, the same amount of checks, but they can do it a lot better. And the act of actually cutting the check will cost a lot less money than it used to.
Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, and other mandatory programs make up around 60% of the federal budget. Donald Trump has often said he would protect most of this spending. Next is
I agree. The checks will continue to be cut for Medicare, Medicaid, all these other services that some Americans rely on, right? I think the checks will still continue. What's going to change, and the money that's going to be saved in that 60% of our budget, is the processes to do it. The processes to cut those checks, the processes required to support the American people. I think those are going to be streamlined and improved. And even though we'll continue to send the money out, we'll do it a lot more efficiently. And the cost to send the money out will be a lot less.
Department of Defense at over $800 billion, which has generally been considered untouchable for political reasons, though it is probably the department that most desperately needs to be streamlined.
Agree there. They have failed 7 years in a row. They have failed their audit. They don't know where their money is going. So there's big opportunities there to streamline processes. Do they need nearly $1 trillion or $800+ billion in their annual budget? How much of that is being wasted because they don't really know where all of it's going? So yeah, can there be significant savings there? Can they cut it in half and still provide the same services? I don't know, but there's definitely a lot of opportunity there.
America has 4 different air forces: the Air Force itself, the Army's Air Force, the Navy's Air Force, and that of the Marines. After the Pentagon comes interest on the debt, also untouchable, which is almost as large as the Pentagon's budget. What is now left is about 15% of the federal budget, which includes certain veterans benefits, agricultural subsidies, spending on roads and highways, etc. To achieve the $2 trillion spending cuts that Musk has often talked about.
As far as that leftover 15%, I don't think Trump is going to impact veterans benefits. And if anything, he's probably going to increase them or do something more for the veterans. Are there opportunities to streamline those processes and make them a lot better for our veterans? Of course there are huge opportunities there. So can we actually increase the benefits that veterans get and decrease significantly the cost to deliver those benefits? I think we can. That's an opportunity. Also, regarding farming subsidies, I think once RFK Jr. gets in place as the Health and Human Services Secretary, I think those farming subsidies are going to be dramatically changed. Instead of supporting the large corporate farms, they're going to start to support the smaller mom and pop farms. And so I think there's going to be a lot of changes there as well. I don't know exactly how that will impact the budget, but I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
He would need to eliminate all of the spending and all of the Pentagon spending, and then he'd still have work to do. But I do support the impulse to reform, and not just because I think it will force greater scrutiny and efficiency to government, which needs it. The duo will also...
At least he does support the impulse to perform, and I think that's a positive thing. I think any rational American would support this impulse to reform the government, reduce government expenses, actually make it so that we are taking in as much or more money than we are giving out. Right now, we are $1.8 trillion in deficit of our budget this year, or in deficit of the money that has come into the government. We've spent 1.8 trillion more than we've actually taken in year to date. And so that kind of thing cannot continue to happen.
Also force the country, and especially the Republican Party, to confront a reality that it has danced around for decades. The modern Republican Party was forged in opposition to Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal. Ever since the 1930s, the party's strongest ideologues have promised to repeal the New Deal and dismantle the architecture of the federal government that was largely constructed by FDR. But they never did.
I mean, some of that is true. I think the Republicans have always run on small government and that kind of thing. And yeah, they have never done anything about it. My entire life, government continues to grow and grow and grow and grow. And the Republicans, say, hey, I'm for small government. And that's one of the things I'm really for. I'm for small government. Let's promote businesses, promote families. That's kind of my political stance. Pro-family, pro-small business, and pro-small government. Those are the kind of things that I look at. And yeah, the Republican Party has failed to follow through on their promises for decades.
The first Republican president to occupy the White House after FDR and Truman was Dwight Eisenhower, who largely accepted Roosevelt's legacy. Next, in 1968, came Richard Nixon, who actually expanded it, establishing new agencies like the EPA, and proposing a version of universal health care, believe it or not. All this infuriated conservatives who kept urging rollback. Ronald Reagan came to political prominence in a nationally televised speech he made on Barry Goldwater's behalf against a growing government and deeply skeptical of farm subsidies and programs like Medicare and Social Security, warning of socialism that would doom the American Republic to a future of tyranny and unfreedom. But of course, during his 2 terms in office, Reagan never seriously tried to repeal Social Security or Medicare. In fact, federal debt held by the public as a percentage of GDP grew under Reagan. It's worth noting that the only president to balance the budget since 1969 was Bill Clinton. Ramaswamy and Musk have both taken to posting a clip of economist Milton Friedman on their social media, in which
We're getting a little history lesson here.
he argues for a very limited role for the federal government. Ironically, this role would not seem to envision any support for things like EVs and civilian space programs, which have helped create the bulk of Elon Musk's fortune.
I mean, really, government should be out of that too. Government should not be subsidizing civilian space programs or civilian EV programs. I mean, get out of that. Obviously, Musk is a really smart guy. He can make Tesla and SpaceX profitable without government subsidy. So I'm okay with him getting rid of those things as well. I think Fareed is just trying to call him out as being a hypocrite here or something like that.
But what decades of public policy seem to have revealed is that Friedman's vision has little support in the US. We are where we are because the American public has voted for Republican levels of taxation and Democratic levels of spending, which leaves a gap that can only be filled by borrowing. There's a strong argument that the US debt is on an unsustainable path, especially when you consider the rising costs that will come as more and more baby boomers retire. But slashing federal spending dramatically will almost certainly cause an economic downturn. Recall Europe's experiment with austerity in the 2010s. The central lesson of macroeconomic policy in recent decades has been that government spending now constitutes a large enough part of the economy that cutting it drastically can lead to a downward spiral of reduced consumer spending and declining confidence.
He may have a point there. Like, obviously, if government stops sending out checks to people that are relying on them for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, welfare, different programs like that, yeah, I mean, money getting into the Americans' hands, that could hurt the economy. But I really don't think that's what Musk and Ramaswamy are going to attack. I think they're looking at the fraud, the payments to people that are dead, the payments to people that are on the do not pay list, the inefficiencies within the government, and like the government contractors that overbill the government but get paid for it. There's so much opportunity in these payment systems and the payment processing systems that people will continue to get their money for Social Security, for Medicare, Medicaid, for welfare programs, for unemployment programs. I think the money will still continue to roll out, but they're going to slash and cut all of these government inefficiencies, these programs where people are getting paid that are actually dead or on a do not pay list or do not qualify to get paid, or the many billions of dollars that are going to programs that are no longer authorized by Congress. You can cut those out right away. So there's tons of opportunity, a lot of low-hanging fruit, and that's really what they're going to attack.
Your expenditure is my income. The US federal government is smaller than much of the industrialized world in terms of spending as a percentage of GDP. It still desperately needs reform and streamlining, but conservatives have long argued that it needs to be much, much smaller. In fact, a good part of the rage that has built up among parts of the Republican base over decades has been centered on the notion that party leaders have promised repeal again and again, but never delivered. With DOGE.
Yeah, I don't know if we're actually calling for repeal. I think we're calling for smart, wise spending of our money, getting rid of the wasteful spending of our money. I think he's talking about repealing major programs. I'm just really interested in getting rid of the fraud and the wasteful spending for these research programs that are overseas, people that are getting paid, like I said earlier, on the do not pay list, these government contractors that are getting, that are overbilling and the government is just cutting them a check. Are we really getting the services and the products that they say they provided and that they are billing us for? We need to check those things, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think there's a lot of overpayments. There's a lot of fraud, and people's pockets are just getting lined. And those are the things that are going to get cut. I think there are people on the left that do a lot of fear mongering where they say, hey, you know what? DOGE is coming in and they're going to cut your Social Security. They're going to cut your Medicare, your Medicaid, your unemployment. So they really want you to be afraid of that. And I honestly don't think any of that's going to happen.
We may finally get an effort to actually deliver on the central Republican promise of the last 70 years. And we will find out what America thinks of it.
Well, I'm curious, what do you think? Are they going to cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, unemployment benefits? Are they going to stop cutting those checks? Are they going to stop sending the money out to the American people? Or are they going to cut other programs, wasteful programs, and things like that? Tell me what you think. Are you afraid of DOGE or are you excited about DOGE? I'm on the excited camp, and I'm really curious to see how this works. I want to see the end result. Again, they're supposed to be done in a year and a half by July 4th, 2026. So I'm really interested to see where it goes. And I honestly think it's going to be a boon for our economy because we're all going to have more money in our pocket. We're going to have more confidence in our government that they are spending money wisely and efficiently, more confidence that the money is actually going towards programs and towards the American people and not going to overseas oligarchs and other programs and wars that we don't want to be a part of. Like I said earlier, I'm dropping DOGE videos every single day. If you want to follow this topic, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And I just want to say thanks again for watching, and I will see you on the next video.